Can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing this show.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might still do it, and I hope she does.
She's not going to do it.
I will talk to her like a human being. I will try to have a conversation with her. If she did this kind of an interview
with you, I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose. You'd be saying, call in the medic. They use COVID to cheat.
Yeah. Well, they use COVID to certainly push this mail-in ballot. Another thing
but they use COVID to cheat. So I always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe.
He said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
Do you even have a scar on your ear? You got anything on there?
I do.
What do we say? What do you got
there? Right over here.
Oh, it's a tiny little mark.
It zicked right there.
Yeah. It healed up pretty fucking good.
Well, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's little.
But it's also this very irresponsible thing where people say defund the police, get rid of the police. You know, even Kamala Harris was a part of that.
But
right?
anybody with that political thought, I don't think should be running for president. And I think people are getting wise to it.
Donald Trump just did a 3-hour podcast with Joe Rogan. He covered so many topics. This is the episode everyone's been waiting for. And here are the best moments from that 3-hour episode. It's SeanDaniel here. If you guys enjoy the videos, consider subscribing or supporting me with a super thanks down below. Now let's get into it.
The rhetoric is also that you're Hitler, and that in order to stop Hitler, you have to do whatever it takes.
That was okay, yeah.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, you're hearing this now. Kamala compared you to, said your love of Hitler yesterday.
Kamala's a very low IQ person. She's a very low IQ. I'm for taking tests, too. I think anybody that runs for president should give them tests. And it's not an age thing. It's not based. If you look back on history, 70s and 80s, some of your greatest leaders in the world history, long-time world history, they were in their 70s and their 80s. But I think you should take cognitive tests. I think they say it's unconstitutional. But
That's ridiculous.
I think Kamala should have a test, because there's something missing. There's something wrong with her.
Well, I think it's pressure. I think the pressure and the scrutiny, you've been a celebrity for a long time and you understand what this is like. But for someone who's in her late 40s, who becomes the vice president, who runs for president, becomes the vice president, and then all of a sudden the weight of the world is on your shoulders, and there's all these people paying attention. A lot of people clam up.
But you either have it or you don't.
Correct.
Look, this is an interview. We've covered a lot of territory, right? And it's fine. I don't care. I want to. I think it's much more interesting. To do an interview with Anderson Cooper, a crazy softball interview. She took 2 days off and she studied all day long, and then she comes out with a result that was a real embarrassment. That was a really bad interview. She couldn't answer a question, and every question's not answered. I mean, like, what would you do your first day in office? Okay, I'll build a wall. I won't build a wall. There's 100 things you can say. Just say anything, right? There's something off with her.
Well, I also
we're dealing with the smartest people. They hate when I say, when I call President Xi, they said, he called President Xi brilliant. Well, he's a brilliant guy. He controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. I mean, he's a brilliant guy, whether you like it or not. And they go crazy.
Right. It doesn't mean he's not evil, or it doesn't mean he's not
of course not.
Dangerous.
But actually, we have evil people in our country.
Yes.
And it's true. Kamala Harris does not have it. She had a softball interview after her days off and did a terrible job in that town hall with Anderson Cooper.
He was a nice guy. Once they shot you, I was like, he's got to come in here. It's all about timing. It's all about the timing.
I think
our timing's perfect. Do you even have a scar on your ear? You got anything on there?
I do.
What do we say? What do you got
there? Right over here.
Oh, it's a tiny little mark.
It zicked right there.
Yeah. It healed up pretty fucking good.
Well, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's little. It's not like some of the wrestlers, some of the UFC fighters.
No, you didn't get cauliflower.
No. It was sort of like a top shot.
Mm-hmm.
The point of the bullet was a little of the ass, but you see the things taken off a little bit. But it makes me a tougher guy. The fighters.
That must make the reality of the assassination attempt sink in even more for Joe Rogan when he sees the scar.
Can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing this show.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might still do it, and I hope she does.
She's not going to do it.
I will talk to her like a human being. I will try to have a conversation with her. If she did this kind of an interview
with you, I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose. You'd be saying, call in the medics.
I think we'd have a fine conversation. I think I'd be able to talk to her. I wouldn't try to interview her. I'd just try to have a conversation with her and hopefully get to know her as a human being. That was my goal, having her on, trying to get her to express herself just as I don't know if I don't think these formats are good. I don't think that two people, first of all, I hate the idea of the presidential debates because I hate the idea of a time limitation on complex ideas. Also, you have to break.
I think you have to have the debates, though.
Right, but the way they do the debates, I think, is the wrong way to do it. I think they should have a conversation. I think you and Kamala, you sit across a table with no one in the room but the two of you.
If that's what happened, Trump would destroy Kamala. And it's evident because Kamala's not going to do this Joe Rogan interview. Her campaign manager said, because of conflicts, we're going to skip out on that.
On every single topic. And, she changed policies on 15. I've never seen anybody change on more than one. You can maybe get away with one. Her whole life, fracking, every single thing that she was for, the confiscation of guns. She wants to confiscate. Now she's saying everybody should have a gun. In fact, we're going to get her a MAGA cap. I'm going to send her a MAGA cap. But she's changed, and I don't think people are buying it.
That would be a wonderful image to see Kamala Harris wearing a MAGA hat.
So I always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe.
Maybe he said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit, pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult to know. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. One of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. Like, you get out and you do these huge events, and you're just talking, and you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times when you did this Biden impression where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand up. It's funny stuff. But it's like and you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have like comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary, "You'd be in jail." Like that's great timing.
Yeah.
But it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as a politician. Like no one had done that. And I think
it's funny. You need at least the attitude of a comedian when you're doing this business. This is a very dangerous business. First of all, it's a very tough business.
It's the most dangerous business.
It's the most, for a job.
Yes, I mean, other than going to war and being a firefighter or being a cop.
Yeah.
It's the most dangerous business.
It's the most dangerous. Being president is the most dangerous.
Especially you. I mean, you haven't even got to the election. There's been 2 assassination attempts, and they've brushed those out of the news like it was nothing.
Yeah, they'd rather not talk about them.
Imagine if there was assassination attempts on Biden, how hard people would be attacking the right, how they would be trying to get guns taken away from people. They would try to ramp up gun laws. They would try to figure out some way to blame you. If there was attacks if Biden got shot in the ear, we would have never heard the end of it.
But
Joe Rogan keeps it real. That is exactly what would have happened. The double standard between the left and the right, the Democrats and conservatives, and how the media treats it is insane. And thankfully, Joe Rogan's exposing it on this massive interview.
First of all, I love this idea of you teaming up with Robert Kennedy.
Right.
And I love this Make America Healthy Again idea, because there are chemicals and ingredients in our food that are illegal in other countries because they've been shown to be toxic. There's pesticides and herbicides, and there's a lot of shit that's been sprayed on our food that really is unnecessary. And there's a lot of health consequences that people are suffering from a lot of these things. And
I brought this chart for you.
Beautiful.
Because I had a feeling you'd be asking me.
Thank you.
Look at this chart. These are healthier countries. Look where the United States is. I'm going to send this to RFK Jr. Look at that.
This is, something along the. I was actually talking to RFK today, and he told me that more than 70% of young men are ineligible for the military because of their health.
I could see it.
That's crazy.
A lot of it's obesity.
So here's the life expectancy versus health expenditure.
Same chart.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
USA.
Wow,
yeah.
that's pretty good.
Jamie's the best.
He's very good.
He's the best.
But but look at that. Look where
at
the
the
USA is.
It's not good. And that's our food.
That
That's our diet. That's sedentary lifestyle. That's our diet. That's the chemicals we ingest. That's what that is.
But RFK is going to be very, I think he's a great guy.
I
think
love
he's
the
great.
fact that you guys teamed up.
Yeah.
And are you guys
combination.
completely committed to have him a part of your administration?
Oh, I am. But the only thing I want to be a little careful about with him is the environmental. Because, he doesn't like oil. I love oil and gas. I think,
Just keep him out of that.
To fire. So I'm going to sort of keep him out of a little. I said, focus on health. Focus.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. But I got to be a little bit careful with the liquid gold,
I understand. But listen, there's plenty of good work that could be done if you focus on health.
Here's the one that my all-time favorite, though.
What is that?
See the arrow right here? That's one I left.
Do you have anyone that is pressuring you to not work with him? Have there been people that are reaching RFK Jr.?
Yes.
Yes, I would imagine. Because financially, he could put a dent.
I would say that, and I think in many ways they've done a good job. In many ways they've done a bad job. But I would say that the Big Pharma wasn't thrilled when they heard that, I have a relation. I've actually always gotten along very well with him. I've known him a long time. He's a different kind of a guy. He's very smart, great guy. And he's very sincere about this. I mean, he really is, he thinks we spend a fortune on pesticides and all this stuff, and then you end up with that chart is a terrible chart, the one previous. It's such a bad chart when you look at where we are compared to other countries that don't spend 10 cents.
Right.
So, and you save a lot of money. But, yeah, I've had some people that aren't exactly thrilled. You can imagine, right?
Sure.
It's a good question, actually.
Well, certainly if
it doesn't affect me.
Some pharmaceutical drugs that have been prescribed that have negative consequences that these people have been profiting off of, and then you have a guy like RFK Jr. who spends an enormous amount of time highlighting those things. You could say how they'd be very reluctant to have you support him.
I would say that's an understatement.
Of course it's an understatement. You're going to take away money from Big Pharma, these people that thrive on people needing medications. And this is the topic that we thought Joe Rogan was going to definitely touch on because of all the health things he brought up back with COVID and everything. This was the thing that not a lot of news organizations want to touch on because Big Pharma has such a grasp on the media and the country.
The rebels are Republicans now. They're like, you want to be a rebel, you want to be punk rock, you want to buck the system, you're a conservative now. That's how crazy. And then the liberals are now pro silencing criticism. They're pro censorship online. They're talking about regulating free speech and that regulating the First Amendment. It's bananas to watch.
Joe, they come after their political opponent.
Well, they
I
do.
got more guys. I always say, I kid, but I'm not kidding. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the meanest of them all. He'd kill you in 2 seconds if he didn't like you, right? I've been under investigation more than Alphonse Capone, only because it's political opponent stuff. And I've won. I won the big case in Florida. I'm winning the other stuff. You win. But you know what they did? They did something that's only done in third world countries. They came after their political opponent.
Yes.
I could have put crooked Hillary in jail.
Well, not only that, but they're weaponizing it by saying that that's what you're going to do once you get in office.
Isn't it great?
By ignoring what they're doing right now.
And that's always how it is with the left. They are going to claim that you're doing what exactly they're doing to get you off their back. They're going to say Trump's coming after his political opponents when they've gone after him just because he's their political opponent.
The morale that the police department has in a lot of these cities where they've done this defund the police bullshit, the morale of these poor cops, it's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest idea of all time.
So bad.
But what they've done is they've made these cops feel terrible. They're like good cops. I think cops are just like everybody else. Most of them are great. It's like everybody else. But if you run into one carpenter and he does a shitty job in your house, you say carpenters fucking suck. But they don't suck. Most of them are great, and
Police
that's the
have
key
been-
thing with cops. But the point is,
Yeah.
like, they did all of these things in this very foolish way,
Right.
and these cops are suffering the consequences of it. And so subsequently, what happens is a lot of crime is unreported. A lot of crime, like you call the cops, they're too busy, they can't even get to you. Oh, your house got broken into? Sorry, it doesn't even make a report. There's a lot of people that they just give up.
It's so sad what's happened. And I'll tell you what, I go to police funerals, and we went to one in Long Island. I visited the family in Long Island, a very big deal. It's so dangerous. People don't realize the car, dark windows, pull over. He's a gentleman. Please pull over. Door opens, guy comes out firing. Even if they were allowed to pull out their gun, which they're not, they can't, pull
Do
out
it in
the gun.
time. Yeah.
They still wouldn't have time.
It's every cop's worst nightmare.
They opened a door, and he was killed, and his partner was hurt. He was killed, and you don't even have an eighth of a second to think, and it is such a dangerous job. That in particular, think of it. You go up to a car, you don't know who's sitting there with a gun, and if they have a gun, you really don't have a chance. You're not allowed to have your gun out, by the way. They have very strict rules. So, number one, but even if you could have your gun out, the door opens and bullets start firing out, and especially where they have the dark windows, where they have the darkened windows. It is such a dangerous profession, and it's very hard to get cops now because they're not given any backup. And you're right. They have like an eighth of a second to make a decision that's going to change their life. If they make the wrong decision, they're going to end up on the front page of every newspaper in the country. And they're going to lose their house and their pension and their job, and their wife is going to be gone, and everything's
Absolutely.
going to be gone.
And here's another thing that people don't talk about. How many of them have PTSD? Probably most of them.
Yeah, it's
These
a
guys are
tough
seeing
job.
people shot all the time.
Yep.
I've talked to a ton of cops about it, and a lot of cops commit suicide. A lot of cops are deeply depressed.
But we have to
cops,
give
they've
them
seen-
back their
Yes.
dignity. We just have to give them back. You said it so good. You never hear anybody say that. You're never going to have it perfect. You're going to have a bad apple.
In everything, in every
Right.
profession.
But every time there's a bad apple, that gets massive publicity, and it taints everybody else.
But it's also this very irresponsible thing where people say defund the police, get rid of the police. Even Kamala Harris was a part of that. That it's a very stupid way to look at it. What you should do is fund the police. You should have better training. You should have cops that feel more appreciated. You should have something that helps mitigate this PTSD that all of them suffer through.
Right. She was a big part of defund the police. That was a big thing for her. Defund the police. Always defund the police.
Well, it's a political
Yeah,
idea,
but
right?
anybody with that political thought,
Yeah.
I don't think should be running for president. And I think people are getting wise to it.
Anyone with that idea should not run for any office whatsoever. Because how are you supposed to enforce the law without the police? Also, not only does it bring so much pressure to the police officers to make the right decision, but all of this rhetoric about how bad the police are, how evil they are, it creates more hostile interactions with civilians because many more civilians, especially minorities, have such a terrible idea about the police that they're already irritated, they're already edgy when a police officer comes up to them instead of having a respectful attitude, like Trump does.
Why haven't you put this evidence in a consumable
I did.
form? In what?
Oh, I did. I have books on it. And by the way, books have been written on it. We have an author named Hemingway, who is a great writer. She wrote a book on it, but many books have been written on it. There are books that are. What's happened is judges don't want to touch it. They would say you don't have standing. They didn't rule on the merits. The merits never got there. The judges didn't have what it took to turn over an election.
Let's talk about the potential vulnerabilities for elections and election fraud. One of them is mail-in ballots. The other one is if someone can break into voting machines. If someone can hack
both are
voting
big
machines.
trouble.
Those are two huge ones.
So
And
Elon
what can be
Musk,
done?
Elon Musk, I think he said it publicly. I hope he did because I wouldn't want to be the one. But he's a really smart guy, and he's a very good guy with computers, right? You'd say he's
He's one of the smartest people alive.
Anybody that can land that 20-story building and perfect and boom,
While he's doing Starlink, while
And
he's
while
doing
he's talking to
Tesla,
me about
while he
some-
owns Twitter.
and then
Yeah.
he agrees to Starlink,
and he tweets 100 times a day.
he's an amazing guy. Right?
Yeah.
He said to me that unless you have paper ballots, it can never be an honest election. That's a big statement.
It's a big statement.
We should go to paper ballots. You know, France did. They went to mail-in voting, and it was all messed up.
What can
you know
be
the
done?
amazing thing with the machines? So we have the machines. They cost 10 times more. Paper ballot would cost 8%. And they make paper ballots, they're all watermarked and everything else. They're very sophisticated. But if you take a look, paper ballots, 8% the cost, and you're done by 9 o'clock in the evening, right? Now we have these sophisticated machine. It goes up to heaven. It goes all over the place and down and around. And they say, we'll need 2 weeks to figure out who the hell won the election.
Do you think that's by design?
Yeah, I do. I think it's very crooked. That's my opinion.
You're allowed to have an opinion. Let's say you win in November. What can be done to mitigate these problems? What could be done at the level that the president has power?
Well, if I win, this will be my last election. But I think I owe it to the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I owe it to the country. We have to have fair elections.
So how can you fix that?
You know, Jimmy Carter was in charge of a commission, that many years ago. And they put him and Scoop Jackson and various senators, distinguished people that were retired. And they came up with a report. And the report's primary finding was you cannot have mail-in ballots. Because if it's a mail-in ballot, I went to the voting booth the last time, whatever it was, and I walked in Palm Beach, and I walk in, and they know me. They say, Mr. President, could I see your identification? Yes, boom, here's this, here's that, everything. And then you sit and they watch you sign, and there's not a lot you can do. I mean, if you wanted to be dishonest, it's sort of beautiful.
Right.
If instead of that, I'm going to send them a ballot.
Right.
It has to go through the postal services. It has to go through a lot of people. They mail you houses that, the house was demolished and the people have left. And it's so bad. The one thing with Jimmy Carter, he had a very strong commission. It was no mail-in ballots. And we're the only one that does elections this way anymore. They've gotten away from them.
And this it ticked up in a big way after COVID. It used to be like soldiers serving overseas.
They used COVID to cheat.
Yeah. Well, they used COVID to certainly push this mail-in ballot. Another thing
but they used COVID to cheat.
Trump says it point blank because it makes sense the way we watch the votes come in and the delay in the counting of the votes and all of a sudden the sudden rush of all these votes that came in just for Biden doesn't make sense. So we'll see this election if they actually have that on grasp, because not as many people are doing mail-in ballots as 4 years ago, but there still might be a lot of people doing mail-in ballots because it became so normalized last election. Not many other media hosts would be talking about this, but Joe Rogan will.
At the White House.
The biggest thing was just that first moment of being in this it was really a hallowed place to me. It was surreal. It was beyond. To me, that was the experience. It was a surreal experience. And then with time, that wears off. With time, it becomes, your place where you stay. And
right.
I was doing I had two things that I really focused on: governing the country and survival. Because from the moment I won, before I got to office, all of a sudden, they came down. Nobody has ever been treated that way. And you see that. You see where in the Washington Post very early on they said, well, now the impeachment stuff starts. And it did. It literally started from the beginning. So I had survival and run the nation. I had a combination. Most people don't have the survival. They get in.
What did you expect, though, in terms of, once you got inside, you had to appoint all these people?
Yeah.
How many appointments did you have to make?
Well, you have actually 10,000 appointments. Now, they're different. You have big ones, and then they appoint 100 people and 200 people. But the president really is involved with approximately 10,000 appointments. So you'll appoint a Secretary of State, and he or she will appoint a lot of people. So it's a lot. But in terms of major ones, you probably have 100, but they're big ones. Treasury, State, military.
And how did you know who to appoint?
Well, I didn't. I had no experience. You have to understand, Joe.
So
I was there 17 times in Washington, and I never stayed over. According to the press, which I think is probably right, over the years, I was only there 17 times. I never stayed over. So now I'm sitting there, I'm saying, this place is gorgeous, but, I don't know anybody. It's like you know, you go to certain areas, and other areas, they may be great. Washington was great. Washington's not so great right now. We got to fix it. We got to make it better. A very dangerous place, very badly maintained place. We're going to make it great. We're going to make it better. We're going to bring it back. But I wasn't a Washington guy. I was a New York guy. I was a New York builder, and I built buildings in New York, and I knew that whole world, but I didn't know the Washington world too well. And all of a sudden, you're supposed to be appointing top people. So,
what did you think it was going to be like? Versus, like, did you have any ideas of what it was going to be like, and what was different?
well, I was always involved in politics, but usually from the standpoint of a donor. I
Right.
was a donor. You know, I was a big donor. I gave money to politicians. I enjoyed politics.
Mostly Democrats, right?
Both, really, pretty much both. I actually pictures of Ronald Reagan and me when I was very
But
young.
you were a Democrat until, like, what year?
I was a Democrat. I could get you the exact, but the early 90s, I switched over eventually. Actually, they had a Reform Party. I was thinking about doing that for a little while, but then fortunately I didn't because it's very hard. You know, it's a two-party system. And anytime you hear third party, I know you like RFK Jr. and so do I. He's a fantastic guy.
I do, but I thought
that
that
whole
being
thing
an
is very
independent
tough.
was nonsense.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work because even if you do great, you're not going to get Congress. In other words,
Right.
you need now to say, okay, now I'll get half of Congress that's never going to vote for you. So even if you got there, which is very hard, and I know how you feel about Bobby, and I feel the same way, and he's now with us. But it doesn't. It's pure and simple. It's a two-party system.
Right.
And somebody, I won't mention his name, but somebody spent $250 million trying to get the nomination as a Reform Party candidate.
Joe Rogan wanted to ask him some real questions. What was it like? Were you surprised by it when you got into a presidency? Did you get overwhelmed? You know, he's like, I had never done that before, so I had to appoint all these people. Yes, I've been briefed on that, but did I appoint some bad people? Yes.
One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is the JFK Files. And one of the things that you said was that if they showed you what they showed me, this was your quote, you wouldn't want people to know it either.
So I opened them up partially. I was met with, from good people. I mean, good people. People that were well-meaning. Mike Pompeo was one of them. He's a good person. They called me. They said, "Sir, would rather have you not." And I did open them, but I was asked by some people not to open them. There's a Martin Luther King file too, by the way, that they'd like to see. I don't know if you know, but there is that. But JFK in particular. So they called me. A lot of good people called me. People that that you would find reasonable people, and they asked me not to do it. So I said, "Well, we'll close it for another time." But if I win, I'm going to open them up. I'm just going to open enough.
Why
time
didn't
is
you
good.
open it up the first time?
Because
though?
a lot of
What
times,
was the hesitation, though?
Addresses, people that are still living. There are people that are affected, and there could be some national security reason that I don't have to necessarily know about. But some very good, talented people asked me not to do it. I opened it up, and then they said, "Would it be possible for us to do that a different day?"
How much of it did you read into?
I think it's going to be just fine to open it. Let me put it that way. I think it's fine. It's going to be time. It's a cleansing. It's really a cleansing. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it immediately, almost immediately upon entering office.
Well, the thing, when people look at it from the outside and you sort of imagine what could be a reason why they would not release those files, it would be there's people that were implicated in the assassination.
Yeah. Well, when there are living people, you generally tend not to want to do it. When people are still living.
Living people that formerly work for the government.
And living people that were somehow involved in it, and you tend not to do that. But it's time to open them. I can't tell you whether or not they're going to find anything of interest. And I did partially open. I think I've opened 50%, but I was asked not to do it, and I thought that was a reasonable ask. But now I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it very soon. You can do that. Elon did that. By the way, Elon is great. That guy is such a great guy. I think you're a fan of
Elon.
Him. He is from a different planet. He's the greatest guy. That rocket coming in.
Yeah.
I told the story once or twice. So you may have heard it because these speeches have been good. Did you see the one last night?
Yeah, I did.
29,000 people. That was
Yeah.
And the one the night before was the same thing. We are rocking and rolling. But Elon, and I'm talking to this very important guy. I say, wait a minute. I'm looking at something. The television's unmuted, right? And I see this rocket. It's all brown from the heat. You know, it's like 10,000 degrees pouring down at thousands of miles an hour. And I see this thing, you know, it's like a 20-story building.
And it catches
And I
it.
say to this guy, who's an important guy, wait a minute, let me just put you down. Hold it. I got to see this. And I see this, and it's going to crash. I say, it's going to crash into the gantry. They call it a gantry. I said, oh, man, that's going to be a disaster because it's starting to get very close. And then all of a sudden you see the flames and the bottom, and it boom. And then you see the two arms grab it.
Crazy.
And I forgot the guy. I had him on the phone. I forgot. No, I said, the hell with it. No, I called Elon. I said, was that you? He said, that was me. And I said, who else can do that? He said, nobody. Russia can't do it. The United States, nobody can do it. You know, I set up Space Force. That was me. And that's the first time in 82 years that we opened another branch since the Air Force. And that's going to be one of our most important things. But think of what Elon does.
And now look at what Elon's doing to cast support for Trump in the election. Cultivate that support and also be one of the bigger standalone tech guys to support Trump and not cave to the pressure of all the other liberal tech guys and what they have to do to fall in line. Hope you enjoyed just a taste of this Joe Rogan interview. Obviously, you can go watch the full 3 hours, but for those of you who do not want to do that, here was some of the best clips. It's Sean Daniel here. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you like this, consider subscribing, supporting me down below, or just hitting the like button. And I will see you in the next one.